Webster defines a journey as traveling from one place to another. But in Journey to the Overland, you'll do a lot more than just travel. From the moment your character leaves his hometown, you'll begin to experience the encounters and adventures that could only take place in Journey to the Overland. Whether you're new to fantasy gaming or an old role-playing veteran, you'll feel right at home, yet uncomfortably new to the world of Overland. Far more than a board game, but not quite role-playing, Journey to the Overland combines the best elements of each. Set in a world where sorcery, magic, and might are the greatest powers, and surviving is the only law, Journey to the Overland gives you what the other games won't: a chance to tackle it all alone. With its unique encounter cards, various scenarios, and extensive use of non-playing characters, you have everything you need to enjoy hours of travels and adventures. But the only way to truly appreciate the commitment and dedication that went into this game is to grab your favorite figure, grab the dice, and start playing. Welcome to a way of gaming you will never leave, because once you begin it, there's no returning from. A Journey to the Overland. Previously on Journey to the Overland. A young adventurer by the name of Maverick Odom decides to leave his hometown of Milesdale and sets out for the town of Zafton in order to find a means to defeat the dragon Valron and avenge the death of his mother. But Maverick and his less than capable assistant Cortana are soon met by a trio of deadly trolls who have other plans. Ill-equipped and untrained, Maverick and Cortana are forced to flee back to the safety of Milesdale. Undeterred, Maverick and his dubious magic caster Cortana are met once again by a trio of Vikings with violent intentions. After being forced to flee back to Milesdale once again, Maverick and Cortana set out again the following day, only to encounter a confused Yeti on the verge of attack. Relying on his presence, charm, and charisma, Maverick convinces the confused Yeti to let him and Cortana pass, only to be abandoned by Cortana that evening as she reminds Maverick that the 3 days he had hired her for are up. Out of money, low on food, ill-equipped, and losing hope, Maverick is visited by a messenger from above who inspires him to press on and continue his journey. Hey, welcome back everybody. This is another episode of Journey to the Overland. This is the beginning of week 2 for a character I created called Maverick Odom. If you saw the synopsis before, the synopsis that I added to the front of the video, it kind of brings you up to date on where we're at with Maverick. Since you guys went away, I did update his character sheet, his character log, and this is kind of the image I drew, and I'm not an artist, but basically I thought the trolls was the most significant event last week. I could have put anything in there, but I don't know, I definitely think the trolls kind of set the pace for the week. I'm going to let you read the journal entry I did for him, and then we'll pick it back up from there. Okay, so if you read that, you can see Maverick's kind of contemplating his fate. He's obviously not too pleased with the services he got from Cortana. And
he has to make some choices. So as we go into our second week of the game, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to pull a new event card, which you do every week. You do not shuffle your encounter deck, and that's something I didn't mention last time. The encounter deck typically should only get shuffled every game, which would be every 2 weeks. Now, if you want, you could play through the deck. I wouldn't recommend that because, I mean, even though the base game has like 100 some odd cards, and there's going to be more cards coming for the expansions. But I prefer to shuffle the deck every game because the trolls are something that inhabit the whole realm, so to speak. So simply because he encountered trolls as he came out of Milestone doesn't mean he won't see any more for, a year of gameplay. And the way the deck is set up, there's only, one of that troll card in there. But when you shuffle it, it can show up again and again. Now, later on, as extra decks become available, you can choose to do things like put more than one troll card in there. You could choose to make decks that have only certain characters or certain types of NPCs in it. So say, for example, you're leaving Dwarf Town. I would recommend personally that you kind of shuffle the deck early on and just put all the dwarf related cards toward the top, right? And then because you're going to be in an area inhabited mostly by dwarves, so you should encounter mostly dwarves. And that's something else I hope to do. I mean, the thing I love about this game is it has a lot of expandability. I mean, it's just basically the cards, the map, and the modules. So one of the things I hope to do in the future is do like an elf deck, a dwarf deck, a creature deck, a human deck, so that there wouldn't be any of the elves, the dwarves, or the creatures. You would just encounter kind of everyday folk. I'm actually thinking of putting that in one of the supplements I'm working on called the Urban Expansion. So, because if you're in the urban area, there's not going to usually be these types of creatures walking around unless they're with somebody. The thing you have to understand about the Overland is while creatures and things are common, people know of them and they're out there, they typically don't just appear in society doing everyday things. So normally if they're with somebody, if you're with a human, then that's kind of your pass or excuse to be out in public without getting killed, right? So and the same thing goes for the weather cards. Like I already have more weather cards and more event cards done. They just haven't been printed, but they're available. They were also unlocked as part of the expansion. And some of the new weather cards are actually pretty cool. But say you want to play games where you have seasons. So instead of doing the mixed weather deck like that comes with the game, you could take out stuff like hurricanes, tornadoes, and other things, or say even blizzards if you're going to do a spring season. So your character is traveling during the spring, you could have a deck that simply has all of the type of spring weather you would get: wind, rain, sun, right? As the winter comes, you can predominantly weight the deck so that it has more winter cards. And that's one of the things I love about doing the game when I did it with cards as opposed to tables. Because if I put a table in the game, I mean, I could do a winter table and I could do a spring table, and that would actually be a lot cheaper if you roll on the table to see what the weather is. But what I like about doing it with the cards is the fact that I could do spring cards, but then again, I could also throw the odd tornado or the odd thing in there. Whereas if you're doing a table, it's either on the table or it's not, right? So you might later on wish that, there was maybe a wizard has caused the weather to go crazy. But if all you have is the spring table, you really have no way of implementing that. Whereas with Journey to the Overland, I could actually structure the deck so that it's spring weather, but I could have a wizard cast a blizzard spell, right? And then put a blizzard cards in effect for like the next week. All of the cards are going to be related to snow or blizzard, or until he's defeated. So there's a lot of things you can do with the game for yourself, or even if you have somebody where you want to set this game up and let somebody else run it and you kind of GM it. And those are some of your GM options, is to be able to control the weather, control the events, right? And to a large extent, you can even control the maps. Because one of the things you're probably not going to see in this game is what I call telescoping. So one of the things I hope to do is eventually take towns like Milesdale and Zafton, and you be able to, when you land on Zafton, you would pull out another map, right? And then you would be in the town of Zafton, and you would have the activities there. That's kind of what the urban expansion map is. If I get a chance, I'll give you a preview of it. But it's basically the inside of one of the towns, right? And so then you could even as a GM create separate encounter cards for inside that town and what happens in the town. You could create separate places to visit, separate news and information. In fact, that's one of the other things I'm working on that came to me after I played the last game session. I kind of took some notes. And one of the things I'm thinking about is doing a separate news and information table for each town, right? Right now, there's one news and information. So if I go to Zafton or Milesdale or Dwarftown or Futuretown or Wooddam and roll for news and information, it's the same table, okay? The audience with mayor tables are different. The study and magic table is different, right? But the news and information table is just kind of one generic table. So that's something I'm looking at creating and offering maybe as a separate supplement, is an expanded news and information, so that when you're in Milesdale, the news is going to be more related to that town. Zafton, which is a harbor town, right? Because you can see it's right here, kind of off that little harbor there, that little inlet. You would have news and information maybe related to harbor events. And then so forth. Like if you were at King's Castle, the news and information would be different. So that's something else I'm thinking of doing. So I got a lot of plans and a lot of things in the works. But for now, we're going to get into the base game and kind of master it. And then, I would definitely love any suggestions or comments. So let me take a break. I'm going to get the next event card. And we're going to see what events are in store for Maverick this week. Okay, we're back. One of the things I want to do before we get into the next week is, after the last game, I kind of took some notes on some things I could have did differently. I mean, you do this in any role-playing game. You always assess your party's you always assess your party's success or its efforts, at what it did or how it could have did it differently. And so it's no different with Journey to the Overland. But I want to go over some of the things I came up with. If you got thoughts, you can let me know. The first thing I made a note with is that I should have went to the Man with the Pegasus home. Could have used it as a free move out of town. If you remember, I think in the first news and information, there was something that said, and I think I was here, right? And there was something that said that, well, there's a guy that lives 1 hex outside of town. You can go to the hex and you're still considered in town, okay? And you do not have to check for an encounter. So what I could have did was, I could have went to this hex, right? I wouldn't have been able to buy the Pegasus, but I could have visited the guy's house or whatever. I could have ended my day there, and I would have still been considered in town, but I would have been a lot closer to Milesdale. I would have basically been literally 2 hexes away. So, like, if you see now, I'm kind of here. I'm kind of stranded, like, right on the edge of the town. I would actually have been able to enter the town the next day, even if there was slower weather or travel or something. So, again, when you read into some of these events, or you read into some of these encounters you have, make sure you kind of take a while and think if it can help you in some other way. Because all I did was say, well, I don't have 1,000 gold and I don't need a Pegasus, so I didn't bother to to use the event. I mean, and that's your option. If it's an optional event, you don't have to go see the guy. But in retrospect, if I would have went there and simply took advantage of getting that extra hex of movement, that might have made a difference. The other thing I put was should not have bought the lantern, and that's a no-brainer. Again, I think it was the second day there was fog, so I wanted to travel while I still had help, and I went and bought a lantern, but I think the lantern cost me 16 silver pieces. So just to stay another night would have only been 10 silver pieces. And that's really not the worst of it. The worst of it was I wound up selling the lantern, and so I only got 8 silver pieces back. So that was kind of a waste. Normally, you can wait weather out. I mean, unless you're being pursued by somebody or chased by the constables, you might as well just wait the weather out. That's kind of one of the functions of the weather cards, is to kind of, it kind of forces you to have a more realistic approach to the game. So unlike some games where every game you get an action and a turn, and okay, I'm going to do this, and then next turn I'm going to do this and this. The weather cards in this game, to a large extent, may kind of keep you from just doing something over and over again. At some point they're going to make you either, it's going to add a risk to what you want to do, or it's going to just tell you can't do it. The other thing was, number 3, I should have hired more help. And that was, again, another no-brainer. I think at one point I sold all of my stuff. My broadsword, which I really miss. But in retrospect, probably after I encountered the trolls, and I kind of saw how this was going, I probably should have went and rode on the seek to hire help table again and seen if I could have afforded to hire some more help. Now, the problem with that was that the magic user was 4 gold by herself. So when you hire people, you're paying them gold pieces and not silver. But I think there's an adventurer or somebody on the table that could actually kind of help you in a fight. Heck, even if I got 2 magic users, that gives me a party of 3. So when we encountered the Vikings, I could have paired everybody up. It would have been one-on-one, and maybe we could have fought our way, and they were only going to fight for 4 rounds. So if we had lasted those 4 rounds, we could have won that fight. And then that brings me to the 4th thing I think I mentioned, which was avoid selling your own items. Because, taking half of what you paid for stuff, you're going to lose money real fast that way. And you're going to have a hard time getting it back, when you're buying stuff for 25 gold and getting 12 gold pieces back because you round down. So whenever possible, always try to avoid selling your own stuff. Merchants sell stuff for a living, so that doesn't really apply to them. But for everybody else, it's not really very profitable to sell you. So it's basically like if you've ever pawned something. That's kind of something you probably don't want to get in the habit of doing. And I think with that, just to kind of give you another rough summation of where we left the game off at last time. I've got 9 silver pieces. I've got 3 meals. And the other thing is my experience points. I don't think I gained any experience points in that last game. I had 2 combats. I think you get 1,000 for every combat. You will apply your experience points at the end of every game, which again is a 2-week period of time. So I think I earned at least 2,000. I didn't defeat anybody, because I think you get some for fighting and then some for defeating them, or the kills. What else was I going to say? With regards to the experience points, all right, let me get my chain of thought. Okay, I remember what I wanted to say. And that is simply that when it comes to gaining experience points for combat, remember you get experience points even if you flee the combat. Once you're attacked or once it indicates they're going to strike you, you're in combat. So when you're adding up how many combats you've been in, don't forget to take into account, even if you flee at the start of the combat, because I think I got struck once. Another time they missed me, but I do get credit for having been in those combats. Okay. All right, let's get right on into the game. Let's see what this week's event card is. So the event card for this week is called Tournament, and you can read a little bit of that. I will read the rest. The king is hosting his annual royal tourneys. So let me see what this is about. I'll be right back. Okay, so this is another weekly event that isn't going to affect me. This is for characters who have the knight skill. Essentially, there's a tournament going on at King's Castle, and they're required to return to the castle to take part in the tournament. It talks about the schedule of fights that's going to occur and the rewards if you win. So that doesn't affect us today. So let's get let's pull our weather card. And I had pulled this earlier, that's why it's up. So this week is ice. And basically what the ice means is if you're riding on a horse or you're in a wagon or a cart, you could slide 2 hexes in a random direction. Well, it says you will slide 2 hexes in a random. That's not going to affect me today because I'm not on a cart or a horse, so I can do my regular travel. So the next thing I have to determine is what I'm going to do. Oh, I was right here. Is what I'm going to do for my daily action, which means I could go into the town, but I really don't have enough gold to go into the town and stay there. Plus, that's considered traveling, so that would be my daily action, is to travel in town. I could stay here and rest, or I could try. And one other thing I will point out, when you enter a town, you do have to check for an encounter. So, and basically you check based on the terrain for the town you're entering. So if you look on the map, the terrain for this town here, this is kind of grassland or open plains. So that would be a 75% chance of having an encounter as I enter the town. And a lot of times the encounters can actually send you away from the town. I mean, depending on what you encounter, you could get waylaid before you make it in town. All right, so give me a second to think. I want to decide what I'm going to do. Okay, so after giving it a lot of thought, I'm not going to enter Zafton. I am going to travel. And basically what I'm going to do is kind of travel in this little pocket there. And see what I can find. I mean, I need to find an encounter or get somebody to join me because I need some gold. So we're gonna roll for an encounter here. The reason I'm not going this way is because if you can see that brown, if there's any color of another terrain in a hex, whatever the predominant one is, that's that hex. That's actually swamps. So normally to get around the swamps, you go through Zafton and come up through here. I don't want to enter Zafton because then I'd have to pay, or else I might get robbed and lose all my stuff. And really, my only thing I'm worried about losing is my short sword. And I don't want to go into the swamps because the swamps, you can get this thing called swamp illness. And there's also, you have encounters at night. If you camp in the swamps, you can encounter creatures. And we might get into that later. I'm not getting into that now because I don't want my guy to die. I was thinking last game, I never even played did a combat, showed you guys how combat works. But that was intentional because I wasn't trying to show game mechanics. This is actually my character, and I don't want him to die. But hopefully we'll get to see some combat soon. So I'm going to just kind of travel around this way, maybe double back to my own town. Hopefully by the time I get back there, I will have picked up some gold, maybe picked up somebody to travel with me, maybe learn some things. But, you just have to get out and travel. And that's kind of at a certain point in this game. You don't start out with enough to really manage things. You have to get out and travel and eventually fight or whatever. At this point, my main goal is to get experience points and to get gold. Once I get experience points, then I can start picking up some skills, and that will give me a lot of options. Like if I was a knight, I could be heading up toward the King's Castle and maybe take part in the tournament. The winner of that was going to get 500 gold pieces. So anyway, let's see what we're going to get on the encounter table. So I replaced the dice I was using last time, and the black is now my 10 die, and I rolled 95. So you only have a 75% chance of having an encounter in the open land. So I don't even have an encounter, but I can move if I want, which means I could travel without having an encounter, which would just take me to another hex. I don't even know if I want to do that. I mean, I like being close to the town in case I have to evade. I was actually hoping to have an encounter to see who I could run into. Alright, okay, so after some thought, I decided rather than just walking around in a circle, I'm going to kind of stay where I'm at because I like being next to the town. So I've already ended that day, but I'm going to show you guys how hunting works because I've only got 3 days of food left. So what I'm going to do is try to hunt. And in your rule book, let me get this one out. The hunting table is, this is the one I can tap. Oh, goodness. Let me see. Okay, so if you get to page 71, it talks about hunting. And basically, hunting allows you to get food after you've done your daily actions if you're outside of a town. And you can try to catch and kill your food. Now, every time you hunt, there's a chance you will be injured. So the first thing you do when you hunt is you roll on this percent table to see what type of animal you're hunting. And that's going to make a big difference. I don't have a very high agility. So there's certain animals I'm going to have a hard time, if not impossible time, catching. Which is kind of obvious because, you know, have you ever tried to catch a rabbit on foot to eat? So I rolled a 34. You can see that. So that means I am hunting a deer, which has a 60% agility score. Now the way hunting works is you subtract the animal's agility score from your agility score. Okay, and the result is your percent chance of catching that animal. Now, obviously, I have a 51%, the animal's 60%, so you always have a 1% chance, right? Which I'm probably not going to catch a deer. Now, if I had rode something like the wild boar, I would have had an 11% chance, even a wild pig. I mean, obviously, it's easier to run down a wild pig or a wild boar, you know, than a deer if you're a human being. If you want to catch a bear, you could probably catch a bear. But once you catch an animal, you have to kill it. Now, I'm probably not going to catch this, so let's just do this for giggles. So I rolled a 76. So now the hunt doesn't end there. Once you, whenever you go hunting, you have to see if you're injured, right? Because the fact that you tried to catch an animal, you know, it might have kicked you or anything. The way you see if you're injured is you take your ability score and you subtract it from 100. So, and that's the only reason I really tried to hunt, because I got a pretty high ability score, which means I'm not as likely to be injured. So I'm at 80. So subtract that from 100. There's a 20% chance that I might get injured. All right, I rolled 47, which is higher than 20, obviously. So I don't have to worry about, I didn't get injured. Now, the other thing I will point out about hunting is if there's more than one person with your group, each of you can roll on the hunt table and try to do your own hunt. In addition, if I catch an animal, once you catch it, you have to kill it. And again, that's kind of a roll, a differential roll. But if I catch an animal and I fail to kill it, if there's somebody with me, then they can try to kill it. So you got a pretty good chance if you catch an animal of being able to kill it and get something to eat. Because that didn't work, I'm just going to have to eat out of my own supply. Now, there's also, the rules also mention certain dogs that can help you when you're hunting. I think that is the snow dog or whatever. Although I didn't see the exact reference to the help. I think that might have got omitted. So I may have to do an errata. Because I think what happens is if you have a dog or something, it adds 20% to your agility. But I'll take a look at that in the next game session, let you know. Alright, in the meantime though, I'm going to go ahead and eat and we're going to pull the next day's weather. Okay, so we're in a very harsh period of the month apparently, because yesterday we had ice, today it's a blizzard. It says a harsh blizzard strikes on land, all players traveling -1 from movement, no air travel is possible, -10 from your ability in combat. Roll 1d10 for all troop units. I don't have any troop units. A roll and it also suffers a modifier in its attacks. So we have a blizzard going on right now, which I'm kind of stuck in the middle of. Which I guess doesn't really have any other effect beyond that for me right now. Sometimes if you're stuck out in certain weather without a coat, you can take wounds, but it doesn't say that. So I can travel, but I would -1, which means I'd move at 1 hex, which that doesn't matter. I'm still going to do that. I'm going to roll from the counter. I can't believe this. All right, I wrote an 83, so I have no encounter again. So, I usually have a 75% chance of having an encounter. I'm dying to have an encounter out here, and I can't have an encounter. So that's odd. This is crazy. So this is just the opposite of last week. All right, I'm gonna do some stuff off camera. I mean, this is kind of boring to sit here and watch me not have encounters. I'm gonna kind of come back, and I'm gonna kind of pick up where I think there's a point where there's something significant taking place. So I'll be back. Okay, so while hunting again, I started to try to look up the thing on animals, and believe it or not, there's a whole section of my rules that didn't make it into the book regarding animals. And it's actually a pretty important section. I did find it in my draft. Okay, this is my original type draft of the game. And this is the section that details animals in the game. So, for example, I was talking about dogs. And it says here, for every dog you have on a hunt, you -10 from the hunted animal's agility. And that was very important, but I couldn't find it. So I'm going to make these available. I'm going to I'll try to add them to Board Game Geek, although they take forever to upload stuff. If not, I might add it as a table on the cheatography table. But this will become available immediately. Unfortunately, it's not in the rule book. But this is the section that deals with animals. It talks about horses. It talks about camels. It talks about dogs. And it talks about cows. Which I didn't even know there was anything on cows in here. So I don't know how this got left out between me and the guy I had that did the draft, the PDF draft for me. I don't know whether it got cut out when there was some pagination going on or whatever, but this needs to be in there. So I will get this. I will get this available online at some point. I'm going to use these rules because I know they're in there. I don't have any dogs with me for the hunt, but when that part comes up, I'll explain how you can use dogs in the game. Anyway, I'm gonna finish up. I'm gonna finish up this night and do this hunt, see if I get any food, and let you know. Okay, just wanted to show you the weather card for day 3. Brisk strong winds. Roll on the random direction chart. If you travel in the direction road, you may add +2 to your movement rate. So And see, these cards would help you a lot, like if the knights that had to head to King's Castle. I mean, this would really help them move quicker. But in my case, I rolled a 3, which is up here. And the random direction table is actually in the section on getting lost, which is why I wanted to show you this. And it's right here. So a 3 means you would head northeast from where your current position is at. So for, like for example, for Maverick, that meant if I traveled northeast, and with these hexes it's easy to do. You know, north would be straight up, so northeast would be this direction here. I would be able to add 2. So normally I could move 2, which would be 1, 2. Because of the winds, I could get 3, 4. So I mean, I could really make a lot of progress. And actually, it would help me so that I got past the swamps. I wouldn't end the night in the swamps. And that was one of the reasons I didn't want to cut through that way. So now that I've got the strong winds, I think I'm going to try that. Because that way it gets me out of this little, you know, it gets me out of this little, I don't know if it's quite, you'd call it a valley or whatever, this little kind of plains or dale that I'm kind of stuck in here. So I'm going to roll for an encounter because I am going to cut through the swamps, although I guess I could cut through the town. Oh, but then I wouldn't get it, right? Because that's not northeast. This would be heading, well, this would almost be heading southeast. Yeah. So I got to cut through the swamps if I want to get the bonus. All right, but then I don't know. What's the encounter? What's the chance of having an encounter in the swamps? Because that can't be too high. It's only a 25% chance of having an encounter. Heck, I'll roll that right now. Because then I can get clear of the swamps. The problem is I think I'm out of food. So, well, I got 1 left. So I rolled 71. Okay. Even I wrote that off camera. But, so I won't have an encounter. And I can move 2 normally. 1, 2. With the winds, it gets me 3, 4. So I actually clear the swamps. And I'm in the desert. Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm going to end the night in the desert. I'm not sure if... I don't know if the desert really has any real negative effect as far as... I think I just have to eat an extra food unit. But I don't think you can hunt in the desert. Holy cow. I didn't mean to get stuck out in the desert. I didn't notice that till the very end. Although I don't have to move 4. Right? So this would be 1, 2, 3. If I stay here, the majority of this hex is plains. So that wouldn't be considered the swamp. If you can, I don't know if you can see that. And there's some swamp on there, but the majority of it is open land. So I really wouldn't have to move 4 because I don't want to end the night in the desert. If I go here, then I would lose the bonus. I wouldn't get to continue. I wouldn't get that extra bonus, and I'd have to stop there. Because it's only if I stay in this direction that I get the +2. Right? But I don't have to use all of it. It says I may add 2 to my movement. So, and this is really, I would not call this swamps because it's more plains than swamps. Although there is some swamp there. So I probably should roll, be like 50-50, I don't know. I think it's mostly plains. I barely can see the edge of the swamp. This is swamp for sure. This is swamp. This is swamp. This is swamp. This is kind of transitional. So if I was here going there, I'd be rolling for swamps. If I was going there, you know, technically I'd be entering the overland, so, or plains, open land. So I'd roll on that encounter table. So yeah, I'm going to stay right there. Because that way I can still hunt. I'm totally almost out of food. I have 1 food left. Okay, so I wanted to show you why I didn't want to get stuck in the desert. If you see here, characters traveling in the desert can only move 2 hexes per day. Unless you're riding a camel. You have to wear a heavy coat. Or else there's a 10% chance you're going to suffer from sunburn. And I know that might seem kind of ironic. You got to wear a big coat in the desert. But if you ever watch people who travel in the deserts in Europe and parts of the Middle East, they're always well covered. And that's to protect from sunburn. Oh, and you also must eat twice the normal amount of food. And you cannot hunt. Right? And if you don't eat twice, you still suffer from malnutrition. And I only have one food left. So anyway, I stopped just short of the desert as I was showing you. I decided not to use the full extra 2, which, you know, it kind of hurt because actually now I'm further away from town where even if I didn't evade action, I wouldn't reach the town. And that's important because say I get attacked and I try to evade, I'm either going to get pushed into the swamps, ran into the desert, or if I head back to the town, I'm not going to be able to make it, which means they'd get a free strike that turn, they'd pursue me, and if I tried to evade the next day, they'd get another free strike. So it's going to be a little dicey from this point on if I have a bad encounter. But I'm going to wrap up the day and then we'll see. Okay, so we're into day 4. I decided to try to travel into the desert, assuming I wouldn't have an encounter because it's only a 25% chance of having an encounter crossing the desert. This is what I rolled. 9. So I pulled the card and this is what I got, which is interesting. This is an orc. He has 75 gold pieces on him. His agility is 49, which is not that great. His ability is 61. He has a +10 war club that does -8 damage. He's wearing absorb 15, maximum absorb 75 armor. So that could be a problem. If I have my broadsword, I don't know. But according to the card, he might actually join me. Now it says he will only join if you are an apprentice of Mordecai or an enemy of the king and his knights. He is a 60% warrior. Now that's what bothers me. Because warrior is actually a skill. So he has access to any of the skills that a warrior would have. So if I grab my rule book and we look up the skills, let's see what pain he could inflict on me. I mean, normally if this was a one-on-one fight, I would take this guy. Now, I haven't rolled on the NPC reaction table because there's obviously a chance he'll just go away. It says if the table says he joins me, he won't join me because I'm not an apprentice of Mordecai or something else they indicated on there. But let's just see what warrior does, because if it doesn't add too much, you know, I might bang with this guy. So warriors are capable of recruiting and leading troops. Warriors may strike 2 opponents in one turn, but cannot strike one opponent twice in one turn. Wow, okay. However, before taking advantage of these benefits, except leading troops, a warrior must pass a skill check. This check only has to be made once a day, preferably at the beginning of the day. The result will apply for the whole day. So basically, a warrior allows you to lead troops, and if you're in combat with more than one person, you can strike 2 opponents, but you can't strike one opponent twice. So that really doesn't bother me. Now the next thing is dealing with his armor, which is pretty high. It's a 75. I have a short sword. Oh man. That does -8 damage. If I had the broadsword, I could definitely take this guy. Now the thing is, if I kill him, I could get his war club, and he has 75 gold. That's huge, right? The problem is his armor absorbs 15, which means the first 15 points of any damage, it goes into his armor. So say I had a weapon that did 20 points of damage, 15 would get subtracted from his armor from every hit. The other 5 would get subtracted from his endurance, which is pretty high. He's 88. His armor is 75. With a short sword, none of my damage is going to get through until his armor is destroyed. But, I mean, at this point, I have to roll. I'm either going to fight this guy or he's going to go his separate way. Let's see. Let's roll an NPC reaction table. So I rolled a 61, which I don't think 61 is that bad. Says NPC is cooperative. They will help you but will not follow you or do any life-threatening actions for you. They have skills, however, they will use them for you provided they are paid or you meet any requirements indicated on the card. It says they won't follow me, which obviously means he won't join me. So, he's cooperative, so that means he's not going to attack me. Now, you always have the option of attacking an opponent, whether they attack you or not. I mean, that's what happens in the Overland, right? So, let me think about this.
Okay, we're back. After much thought and contemplation, I've decided I'm going to just pass by this guy. I'm going to let him pass me, and I'm going to pass him. I mean, if I had my broadsword, I would take a chance of taking this guy. Even if I had a skill by now, I would take a chance of taking this guy. Even if he wasn't wearing armor, I would take a chance of taking this guy. Even if he didn't have the war club, I would take a chance of taking this guy. But with everything, it would really be silly for me to take him on, especially in the terrain we're in, and the fact that, you know, I could wind up, if I had to flee the battle, I'd wind up in the swamp or the desert, you know, and not to mention, you know, he'd be right on top of me. And yeah, I can't take this guy right now, and I just have to be honest with myself. So I'm going to go ahead and do my movement. So he's going to come off the map and go his own way. I get to move 2 because I'm crossing through the desert. I'm not stopping in the desert. So I'm going to do this 1. I definitely don't want to finish the day on the desert. I can go here and then cut around these mountains, which is actually the dragon's home. If you remember the last game, I had my dragon token there, which is kind of it's kind of ironic. I'm winding up right here near his home. Now this is kind of dangerous to go through this pass, because other than that, there's no other way than if I cut through the mountains. Although if I go here, this is like 50% desert, 50% hills, so I'd have to roll. Of course, what's further up that way? That would get me closer to the Wooddam Forest. The nearest town is Wooddam right now, which is north of my position, which is right up here. So, holy cow, which way should I go? So, oh crap, this is not an easy decision. I'll be back. Okay, so having moved past, I decided to take the mountain pass, but I'm out of food. I tried to hunt, ran into a deer again, didn't catch it. I didn't get wounded. But you see here where it says you suffer a loss of 2 endurance points for each day you don't eat. So I'm gonna have to take that loss because I have nothing to eat. That's all there is to it. I don't have anything to eat. So that's going to put my endurance down to 59, which is something else I didn't think about when I was talking about taking on that orc. I almost forgot that I'm walking around wounded still. I'm still injured, so, and I haven't rested in a while. So I'm glad I didn't fight him. I was thinking I had my 88 endurance, but it was actually down to 61. So I'm out here now. I just finished up day 4, so I'm going to go into day 5. My Lord, this is terrible. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. This is really going to be bad. A sudden earthquake strikes. All animals and horses are lost. Characters must make an agility check.
failure and they receive minus 20 wounds and will be stuck in their hex for 3 days unless another character pulls them out by passing a muscle check. Commanders of cavalry. So this is terrible. Because if I don't have a high agility, and if I don't pass this agility score, I'm already out here with no food, right? I'm stuck between the mountains and the ocean. If I fail, I'm going to take 20 wounds. My endurance is already down to 59, right? I'm not going to have any food to eat, so I'm going to take another 2 wounds. And then it says I'm going to be stuck in the hex for 3 days unless somebody pulls me out, which obviously I have nobody to pull me out, which means I'm going to be laying here buried under rubble for 3 days with no food. Sounds like a friggin' TV show. But I have to make the agility check. So, and this is one of the reasons, whoa, sorry. Oh my goodness. This is one of the reasons I emphasized earlier that you have to make some tough decisions when you allocate your dice rolls, because agility is a very important statistic too. You know, I've got a high ability and a high endurance, and neither one of them have really served me much yet. Whereas if I had a high agility score, it would have came in handy a lot already, even a high presence score. But anyway, right now I need to make this check. So I'm going to roll it. I'll let you know. Okay, so the worst thing that could happen. I failed to check. I rolled a 54. I have a 51 agility. So I failed it by 3 points. I don't have anything that allows me to get a reroll. So I'm going to resolve this, work this out, and I'll be back. Although I might not be back for 3 days. Game days, that is. Okay, so we started day 6. I took the 20 wounds. I took another 2 for not eating. So I'm down to 37 wounds. This is the weather, a tornado, which basically blows people's horses out from under them. And that's my character Maverick right there. He's trapped under that pile from the earthquake. And he's not going anywhere today. So, I'll be back. Okay, so this is the next day, which I think is day 7. A hurricane. And none of this affects me. Now, one of the things I did work out is, since I'm not able to do anything, I'm considering that resting is my only action. Technically, I could still hunt, because the card didn't say that, you know, I couldn't do anything but stay in the hex. It said I was trapped in the hex unless somebody pulled me out. So I'm assuming, you know, the rocks have blocked my path for 3 days. But other than that, I mean, I took the wounds I was supposed to take. It didn't say I couldn't choose any other daily action. So I'm resting, but I'm still losing wounds for not eating. I'm afraid to try and hunt, because I'm afraid if I get wounded, it's going to really drop my endurance even further. So I'm taking 1 wound a day instead of 2, because technically I'm resting. And so this ends the week, which gives us an end of a game, an end of a 2-week period. And this is how Maverick ends the week. He's basically trapped either under those rocks or behind those rocks or whatever. I won't come out until the day after tomorrow, because that'll be the end of the 3rd day. What I am going to do, though, is roll for my Dragon Valron check, which is something I mentioned to you guys not to forget to do. So let me look that up, and I'll be right back. I looked that up. Actually, it's only once a month. I don't know why I keep saying every 2 weeks. So the dragon's not going to appear. Plus, when I looked it up, the dragon actually flying doesn't really affect you much as a character. It affects the towns and their troop count, meaning they lose troops. But what it allows you to do as a character, it gives you an attempt to maybe shoot the dragon down.
and kill it once a month. But this is the end of the game at this point for Maverick. He's finished 2 weeks. He's obviously trapped. He's earned some experience points. You get experience points for hunting, which I was going to mention, but you only get it for every week of hunting, meaning if you accumulate a week. It doesn't have to be a consecutive week. I think I've got 4 days, so I need 3 more. I only had 2 combats because that one encounter with the orc did not turn into a combat. So this actually is going to conclude another week. I got a little. I have an idea of what I'm going to do next week. I'm not going to tell you guys here. I guess I'm just going to let you guys leave you with Maverick's fate hanging in the balance. His wounds are. He has a lot of wounds, and you know, right now he's trapped. So I hope you guys pick up the game if you can, and see if you can do better. Take care.
My name is Maverick. I'm from the town of Milesdale, and I live in the Overland. The Overland is a dangerous place. You never know what you will run into, and you never know what you will find. When at all possible, never ever travel alone. And when all else fails, it's better to run and live to fight another day. And in the end, if you have faith, hope will light your way.